Genesis 4, chapter 1. And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. But unto Cain and to his offering he had no respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth? And why is thy countenance fallen? And if thou dost well, shalt thou not be accepted? And thou dost not well, and if thou dost not well, sin lieth at the door. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother, and slew him. And the Lord said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not, am I my brother's keeper? And he said, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. And Cain said unto the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that not every one that findeth me shall slay me. And the Lord said unto him, Therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived, and bare Enoch, and he builded a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. And unto Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mehulah, and Mehulah begat, I can't even pronounce these names, and it just goes on and on. After Adam and Eve were tossed out of the Garden of Paradise for disobedience, they had to begin the life of ordinary mortal creatures struggling to survive and reproduce. Their first two boys, Cain and Abel, became a farmer and a herdsman. It became apparent right away that God favored Abel over Cain because of the kind of gifts that God was accepting. Slaughtered sheep versus vegetables. As a vegetarian, I would have favored the produce and allowed the sheep to go on grazing, but now, having publicly praised Abel and rejected Cain, it's no surprise that Cain, whom God created with a short fuse, decided to level the playing field by murdering the competition. Next comes the expected angry reaction from God, who had no idea this would happen, and Cain is punished by being banished from the sight of God, who is everywhere, don't forget, and has to travel to the land of Nod, to the east of Eden, where he meets his wife and has a son Enoch. I think some pages got lost here. This is a fascinating tale from the ancient past, but as any good storyteller knows, things must add up, or the intelligent reader becomes suspicious and doesn't believe it. It's far more likely that this story, like so many others, was passed on through word of mouth and had lost its accuracy along the way, or it is fiction and the translators just didn't realize it. How else would Cain, who was one of the only 3 humans on the planet, wander off to the land of Nod and find his wife? The situation gets even more difficult when Cain, presumably with the help of his growing son and these mysterious Nodians, builds a city. Now, wait a minute. And Adam lived 130 years and begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Seth. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begat daughters and sons. And all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And Seth lived 105 years and begat Enos. And Seth lived after he begat Anos 807 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. And Enos lived 90 years and begat Canaan. And Enos lived after he begat Canaan 815 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enos were 905 years, and he died. And what has this got to do with anything? These people are living almost 1,000 years, and nobody lives that long today, so I just don't know what to make of this. Chapter 6. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repented me that I have made them. So from verse 4 to verse 5, God goes from praising mighty men who were of old, men of renown, to God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of thought of his heart was only evil continually. So it's from one extreme to the other. So instead of a divine plan, Genesis has become God's second mistake. First, the angels in heaven rebelled and produced Satan, the devil. And now this. In his own words, he, God, is not perfect. He makes mistakes. He suffers from his mistakes, and he becomes angry and destructive over his mistakes. God thinks and acts like his own creations. The angry God now decides to destroy all life on the planet, not just the people, but everybody. Everyone has to go, except for a man named Noah and his family that he instructs to build a large seagoing vessel called the ark. God instructs Noah that every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort, shalt thou bring into the ark, and keep them alive with thee. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by 7, the male and female, and of the beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and the female. I'm having trouble keeping up with all this, but I guess he's taken a sample of every living thing on the planet, including Titanosaurus, which is a dinosaur. It's 122 feet long, and he needs a male and a female to bring them aboard the ark. And of course, bringing these animals is a little bit of a problem, but God manages this by himself. God's new plan is to reseed the earth with a mated pair of every living thing by storing them aboard the ark while he floods the entire earth with water. Common sense argues that Noah and his family cannot build a ship large enough to hold a mated pair of every living thing, much less keep them alive for 40 days without them eating one another. On the other hand, God can put them into a deep sleep like a bear so that they don't need to eat, The problem is when they get off the boat at the end of the flooding, there isn't anything to eat. So at that point, I suppose God doesn't make them hungry, and so the carnivores don't eat the herbivores. So it all makes sense because God did it. What doesn't make sense is why God has to go through this ordeal when he can easily create a virus and instruct it to attack certain people without harming anyone else. But according to the story, everybody's bad. Everybody. Except 7 people. And I honestly don't believe this. If God is perfect, he can't make a mistake. This is a divine plan. This is not a divine plan. In Genesis chapter 9, verse 1, it says, "And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth." This brings up an issue of incest between family members. In a Czechoslovakian study of children whose fathers were first-degree relatives, fewer than half of the children who were the product of incestuous unions were completely healthy. 42% of them were born with severe birth defects or suffered early death, and another 11% were mildly mentally impaired. This study is particularly instructive as it included a unique control group, the offspring of the same mothers, but whose fathers were not the mother's relatives. When the same women were impregnated by a non-relative, only 7% of their children were born with a birth defect. Let's move ahead to Genesis 11, verse 1. "And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And they said, Let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, and the Lord said, Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, and they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city." The author of this story failed to explain why we have a variety of languages. The plot is about human beings who are trying to reach heaven by building a tower. The fact that heaven was not up there made no difference, or that mountains already rose higher into the sky than any tower. This time, God up in heaven has to come down. He's 3 persons, remember, so he's consulting with the other 2. That's why the word us. To find out what these arrogant humans are up to this time, instead of laughing when he sees their folly, he becomes angry, scatters them, and alters their language. This stops them from building any more towers. Of course, we now have the World Trade Center. There's a little problem with this also, the fact that this planet is like a tiny dot. If you see a picture of the Milky Way, you can draw a circle around one little tiny dot amongst millions, and that's our Earth, which God seems to be taking a great deal of interest in, even to the point of interfering with human activity, which is like bacteria or ants activity from his point of view, and he has to intervene because he's angry and he's threatened by what the tiny little organisms are doing, and this doesn't make any sense.